Okay, so story time. Back in 2018, I was looking to upgrade my Sony A6300. At the time, two frontrunners became quite clear: either get the Fujifilm X-T4 or pick up the Sony A7iii. They both were, and still are, incredible hybrid cameras, and as someone who shoots pretty evenly between photo and video, I really did need one that could do both. Despite loving the X-T4 and it being a totally capable camera in so many ways, I actually ended up going for the Sony A7iii for one feature only, and that was inbuilt image stabilization, or IBIS. I couldn't deal with the micro jitters that the X-T4 had in video, and it didn't have any prime lenses with optical stabilization, and it would just mean I'd have to take a gimbal around with me everywhere, and that's just not something that I wanted to do. But now the X-T4 is here, and it's got inbuilt image stabilization, it's got a flippy screen, and it's got even better photo and video modes. For all intents and purposes, this is the perfect camera for me, and if this was available back then, I would have purchased it, no question. To be totally clear with you guys, I did reach out to Fuji for this review unit, and they were kind enough to lend it to me for 2 weeks. But they haven't asked me to say anything about it, and they're seeing this review the same time as you are. If that's the sort of video you'd like to see more of, then do consider subscribing. Anyway, let's dive into the review.
Let's briefly talk about the build, because despite it looking pretty similar to previous XT models, there's actually some significant changes here. First off, the camera is a little chunkier than it has been before, and that's thanks to the new built-in stabilization and their all-new much improved battery. It's by no means big though, and the added depth has given Fuji space to improve the grip, which makes it a much more comfortable shooter than the previous XT models. The main change up, however, is the fully articulating screen, and as someone who shoots as much video as photos, I absolutely love it. I know a lot of people see the Fuji cameras as a photography only thing, and adding a flip screen is seen as some sort of sacrilege, but that's just not the case anymore for the XT series. This is a hybrid camera, and I welcome the change wholeheartedly. To add to the improvements made to video, there is now a dedicated dial so you can switch between photo and video modes without having to totally change your settings, which is a thoughtful and much needed improvement. That new battery is worth raving about too. The small batteries in Fuji cameras up until now meant you often had to carry around a few with you, but no more. The new bigger battery is a trooper, and I've gotten through entire days without having to switch one out. It's excellent stuff. Overall though, the X-T4 keeps that retro cool styling that makes Fuji stand out, while modernising the design to let it take advantage of its truly hybrid nature. Let's talk about video, because really it's the area I was most excited about for the X-T4, and that's mainly because of the addition of the inbuilt image stabilization. This was my biggest complaint with the X-T3. No IBIS and a lack of optically stabilized primes meant for my style of shooting, it was just horribly shaky, and it made a lot of the footage really unusable. With the X-T4 though, that's completely gone. The IBIS here is solid and allows me to shoot handheld shake-free with any lens attached to the body. While it's not quite at the same level as the GH5s out there, it's better than Sony's, and that's totally fine by me. That said, I wouldn't vlog with it. Sometimes when the sensor shifts to accommodate the shake, it can feel a little robotic, and the corners can occasionally wobble, but it's nothing overly distracting. Also, shooting with the fully articulating screen is an absolute pleasure. As someone who films themselves a lot and has never had an articulating screen to hand on any of my cameras in the past, this is a game changer, and I can see why so many people love it. I've been using an external monitor for a long time on my Sony for most video shoots, but with the articulating screen, I found I never really needed it. I don't want to get too bogged down with video specs and details. You can read into those elsewhere if you want to. All you really need to know is the X-T4 can shoot up to 4K 60p in 10-bit 420 and in Full HD up to 240p, which is 8 times slow motion. The quality is absolutely stunning, and for this style of camera, I really don't think you can ask for much more. What's always stood out to me more on Fujifilm cameras is the colour, and blah blah blah, don't get me wrong, people talk about colour science all the time with Fuji stuff, and of course it's all subjective at the end of the day. You can make things look how you want them to look in software, but I must admit I do love the image from the X-T4, it's gorgeous. Everything you're watching now was shot in f-log at 10-bit 4K in either 25 or 50 frames per second, and I don't think I could enjoy the footage more from this camera if I tried. F-log is so easy to grade compared to the other ones I've worked with, and if you're new to working with log footage, Fuji provide a LUT that brings it to their Eterna film simulation, and from there onwards you get a lot of flexibility of how it looks. But honestly, after a few clicks in Premiere Pro, I was more than happy with this footage. As good as f-log is, one of my favourite features of the Fuji cameras has been the Eterna film profile for video. It's here again on the X-T4 and it just puts out such a usable image for video. You can leave this totally ungraded and still get a fantastic image. Skin tones are on point, colours are soft and cinematic, and if you do want to grade, there's still a little bit of room to do so. I know for a fact that I would use this for YouTube videos over f-log all the time. I absolutely loved the X-T3 for photos, and the X-T4 really is no different. Actually, the experience is incredibly similar. It's the same 26 megapixel X-Trans 4 sensor that produces really wonderful results. Fujifilm simulations are all here with the addition of some new ones too, but I always find myself defaulting to the classic chrome look, which is just utterly fantastic. In fact, I was so impressed with how these photos were coming out, I never felt the need to switch to shooting in RAW, so everything you're seeing here is actually just edited JPEG shots. There are some updates over the X-T3 of course. The autofocus first and foremost has had a bit of an update for tracking and overall quickness, and the shutter can fire off up to 15 shots per second mechanically, which came in ideal for these sports shots. The only real drawback across the Fujifilm lines is how the autofocus performance changes depending on the lenses you go for. I was using the 35mm 1.4 and the 16mm 1.4, and they're notorious for not having very quick autofocus compared to the f2 primes and the other zooms out there. This isn't a huge deal breaker for me, but it's worth doing your research around lenses if you want the best performing ones. I kind of knew this going into this review, but the X-T4 covers me really well for photography. It's an excellent stills shooter, and despite its powerful video credentials, it hasn't forgotten or left out its photographic roots. Every time I review a camera, I say a similar thing. The perfect one doesn't exist, but for me the Fujifilm X-T4 is easily the closest to perfection a camera can currently get. It's a true hybrid that has robust photo and video specs and wraps them up in a clean retro-inspired package, and it's got me seriously questioning my current Sony A7iii setup. So that rounds up this video. If you enjoyed it, do consider subscribing to the channel, that helps me out a bunch. Drop a like on your way out too, and I will see you all in the next one.